Hi everyone, it's George with Dunlop Security Group. Today, I'm going to arm you with the knowledge of how to actually read an individual control in the CMMC Level 2 assessment guidance. You can get your own copy of the guidance from the official website of the DoW CIO. Now, onto the guide. The CMMC Level 2 Assessment Guide is what assessors are going to use to assess your environment. This is basically an open book test. All 110 CMMC Level 2 controls are in here, along with the 320 assessment objectives that make up those controls. As of recording, this is the latest version of the assessment guide. So as we're going through the assessment guide, we have our table of contents. There's kind of a preamble section, which is very important to read, but for this video, I want to focus on the actual security controls that are required by the CMMC. So we have access control, awareness training, audit and accountability, and so on. There's going to be 14 CMMC security control families, and they're listed in alphabetical order. So that's how the grouping works. So let's start with access control. And what I would like to do before we dive into what this control is specifically asking, let me show you how we break down how to read a CMMC control. First things first, we have the control ID. AC, access control. L2, because it's for CUI information. 3, the 3 I believe is because that's the section in the NIST 800-171 where the controls started, though I could be wrong there. Then we have .1. This is .1 because it's the first domain. It's the first family of controls. And finally, .1 here at the end just means this is the first control in the first family. Oftentimes when people are talking about the CMMC, we'll actually leave off this front part and we'll just say 3.1.1 because some of this information's a bit redundant for us at the front. Just to give you another example, physical protection, we can see it's PE, which somehow stands for physical protection. And then it's the 10th domain, so it's 3.10, and this is the first control in the physical protection domain, so we're back to 1. And of course, the next control in here will be 3.10.2. Hopefully that makes sense. So going back to our first control, 3.1.1, here we have the title of the control, I guess you could call it, authorized access control, and then we have the control description or control text here. Limit system access to authorized users, processes acting on behalf of authorized users and devices, including other systems. Some organizations will basically stop here just at this control description, and they will just answer this question or implement this control. What they don't realize is that the assessors are actually going to be breaking things down further, and they're going to be looking at assessment objectives. These objectives further break down this description, and sometimes they add stuff that actually is not even in the control text. So it's important that you always, always, always go to the assessment objective level, because that's what you're going to be graded against. So as we see here, assessment objective A is authorized users are identified. So, while maybe you could glean that from the description text, it's not specifically called out that we need to have a list or some type of way to identify authorized users if we just read this top text. So that's why you always want to read the assessment objectives carefully for each and every control that has them. The next section is potential assessment methods and objects. So when you get assessed or you're doing your self-assessment for CMMC Level 2, what the assessors should be looking for is things that they can examine, such as an access control policy where you write out how you're implementing this control, or procedures. Maybe for this one, it's about onboarding procedures, system design, documentation, etc. Basically, any type of thing that they can see, that they can lay eyes on, that shows them that you're doing this control. It could even be screenshots of perhaps your Active Directory or LDAP, for example, for this control. Assessors will also most likely want to interview the personnel who are going to be responsible for doing this control or for carrying out what this control describes. So for this one, we might be looking at IT personnel. You can make a case for maybe HR personnel for the user perspective, that sort of thing. Finally, another potential assessment method is going to be test. This would be maybe an assessor would hop on a call with their system administrator, and the system administrator would show in Active Directory how they're authorizing users, the authorized user list, if it's in AD or if it's a separate list from HR, actually showing that process so the assessor can confirm that the organization is actually completing this control. Assessors aren't necessarily going to do an examine, an interview, and a test for each and every control, but it's something that you should be aware of and be ready to respond in turn with if they do require that information. The next section, discussion, is where the government kind of gives you sort of an idea of what they might be looking for here. And in addition, there's also a further discussion section where they give even more information. And finally, maybe one of the most helpful sections here, sometimes they give examples. I will say, sometimes the examples are amazing, and sometimes they are not that great and not that applicable, but it is always worth taking a look at the example they give. Then we have potential assessment considerations. These are questions that you can ask yourself, or maybe the assessor will ask you, so be prepared to answer these. And then we have just key references that you can look into if you want more information about where this control is coming from. So that's how you break down the CMMC Level 2 assessment guidance on a control-by-control basis. Hope this helps. And as always, if you have any questions for us over at DSG, please feel free to drop us a comment or an email. Thanks so much.